Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Welcome once more to another video podcast of Alexandra Mayers Live. I'm your hostess, Alexandra Mayers. Today, we are going to delve into Chapter 7 of Shelley Lubben's book, The Truth Behind the Fantasy of Porn, the Greatest Illusion on Earth. And I must say, Chapter 7, which is titled Dead Even, is very interesting and, from my perspective, very timely when it comes to some issues that revolve around women who may be adult entertainers or porn stars or sex workers, exotic dancers, escorts, even. Just recently, I posted quite the interesting article, which originally was posted on the Daily Beast. It's an interview. It's an interview with a young woman known as Heather Vaughn. Apparently, Heather Vaughn has been in an incredibly abusive relationship for quite some time, allegedly, with a male porn star known as Tommy Wood. And if you would like to check out that particular piece, just pop on over to Porn News Today. It's reposted under the title, Another Report of Extreme White Privilege Enabled Male Porn Star Abuse. According to the Daily Beast, Tommy Wood is a psycho. And that headline does not exaggerate the tale that Heather Vaughn shares with everyone in regards to what she's been through, allegedly, when it comes to Tommy Wood. But I really don't feel like her story is uncommon. And what quite a few people may not realize when it comes to Shelley Lubben is that she went through quite a few abusive relationships throughout her life. And in chapter 7, she talks about one in particular. Now, the individual that she dealt with, at least according to this chapter, he was from either South America or Central America. So he may not have been enabled by white privilege, but still, something that I personally feel that a lot of adult entertainers need to understand upon entering a relationship, especially if they're female, is that a lot of people outside of the industry view adult entertainers as being very easy prey to woo, impress, seduce, but then abuse. Because honestly, a lot of adult entertainers, they may be involved in activity that's illegal, and individuals who prey upon them figure, well, I can just go ahead and abuse this person, because where are they going to go for help? What police officer will believe them? What judge is going to put a judgment against me? And Shelley Lubben actually touches on a bit of this in chapter 7 of her book. So I just do want to warn adult entertainers out there that just because somebody approaches you and seems like a knight in shining armor at first, do your best to look beyond the surface. Run a background check on them, even, because quite often someone who presents themselves as being your savior in actuality could wind up becoming an abuser who might ultimately try to kill you. So here we are, chapter 7. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but I will read quite a bit of it. That psycho was going to regret the night he ever met me. When I came home and found him sitting on my couch with a huge knife, I was furious. "What are you doing here, Miguel?" I demanded to know. He didn't answer me, except with the sound of heavy breathing and rocking back and forth on my couch. I quickly handed my 3-year-old daughter to my roommate and motioned her towards the bedroom. "Lock it, and don't open it unless you hear my voice," I said. Adrenaline rushed into my veins. "I'm going to kill him," I told myself. "I'm going to cut him into little pieces and hurl them into the dumpster across the street." But something told me to play it cool. If I killed him, I'd probably end up in jail, or worse, he might hurt my daughter, Tiffany. No, this guy required special handling. Sweetie, I said as I changed my tone, I love you, Miguel. Put the knife down, honey. I'm sorry. I got home so late, but it was my turn to clean up at the bar. My loving eyes welcomed him back into my open arms. His face softened, along with the grip around his knife. That night, I stayed up until 5 a.m., convincing Miguel that I loved him more than any other man. I did whatever I had to do to protect Tiffany and me. For months, the maniac had been harassing me and stalking me. I should have realized he was a stalker the first night I met him, but the money blinded me. All I saw was a mountain of green in front of me, his big brown eyes and boyish smile. Miguel was every stripper's dream, a young, rich, good-looking man. The first night I met Miguel, he gave me a crystal rose and $500 in tips, along with a request for dinner the following night. I told him I had to work, but he offered to pay me double what I usually made. I greedily accepted and blindly entered into one of the worst episodes of my crazy life. It started off perfect. He spoiled me with money and gifts, and I spoiled him with sex and soft talk. He had no idea that I was stringing along several other men at the same time I was stringing him along. Not to mention my lesbian babysitter. I was a professional hustler by then and didn't have the heart to love anyone. I wanted the money. Cold, hard, ready, dirty cash. Besides, any man who came into a strip club and expected a stripper to be faithful to him deserved to be strung along. That was my mentality. After 2 weeks, Miguel began to act jealous and start fights with my regulars at the bar. That was a very big no-no for me. I explained to him that he wasn't paying my bills and had no right to disrupt my business, but he insisted I belonged to him and that he would kill any man who came near me. I told him to leave immediately, but he flipped up my tray and threw a chair over. It turned out he was a crazy Ecuadorian and practiced tequila drinker. I had met my match. I really thought I had dated some weirdos in my day, but this guy took the cake. No matter what I did, I couldn't get rid of him. I tried begging him in tears. It didn't work. I tried telling him I had a disease. He didn't care if he caught it from me. Just a pause. I wonder if this guy would have felt that way in the midst of this coronavirus. I lied and said a family member died and I needed time to grieve. But when he came into the club and saw me laughing, that story died. I finally had to ask the men at the bar to help me get rid of him. They agreed and ganged up on him near his apartment and threatened him. He wasn't affected by it at all. He was impenetrable. He was a complete, unmodified psycho. In fact, I called him Slasher for short because he slashed not only my tires, but any other person's tires that came near me. He was relentless. After I refused to take his calls or speak to him anymore, he began to make death threats on a daily basis. I called the police to complain, but when they asked me where I worked, I hung up the phone. No cop was going to listen to a stripper. One night, I borrowed a neighbor's motorcycle to drive to work because the slasher had struck again and slashed all 4 of my tires. And just to interject, what this guy was doing was trying to prevent her from going to work so that she couldn't earn money to either move or get away from him. And that's a very, very, very common tactic when it comes to obsessed stalkers, abusive boyfriends, and the like, who fixate upon adult entertainers or sex workers. As I pulled out of the driveway and looked around carefully, there was no one around as I sped off to work. About 5 minutes later, I heard the sounds of a revved up truck engine gaining on me, and I knew it was him. I looked over my left shoulder, and there was the psycho yelling at me out the window. "Pull over, Giovanna!" He called me by my stage name. And I'm going to interject there too. The fact that he called her by her stage name rather than her actual name, if he knew her real name, showed that he was more in love with the fantasy opposed to the reality of the human being she actually was. And that's a very common problem that adult entertainers run into, whether they're in the industry or have left the industry, when they attempt to date or get into relationships. To this day, that's an issue I still run into when I choose to date, which is something I have not chosen to do in quite some time, considering the last disaster that I went through, which I'm not going to disclose in this podcast. All right, so I'll continue. "Pull over, Gianna." He called me by my stage name. "Pull over right now. I want to talk to you." I ignored him. I kept driving forward, hoping he would follow me all the way to the nearest police station. A second later, I saw his Toyota truck veering into my lane, and I figured it was to try to scare me, but no. That psycho rammed his blue truck right into my motorcycle. I flipped up in the air and off the bike, landing in a huge ivy bush. See, she could have been killed. I hurt so badly, but I didn't care. Terrified, I got up and ran as fast as I could through backyards and bushes until I finally came to a lighted back porch. A man came out and saw the blood and bumps on me and called 911. The cops came and took a police report, and my friend's motorcycle got towed away to the junkyard. Great, I thought. My friend's motorcycle was trashed. Miguel never caught me that night, but he did give me some bruises and bumps to think about. I kept a low profile for a few days while my body healed. It gave me some time to think. I had to come up with a plan to get rid of him forever. A week had gone by, and not a word from Miguel. I figured he was freaked out by the accident because he was probably drunk when he did it. Besides, there was a hit and run out on him, so he was headed straight for jail. Or so I thought. He got arrested about a week later, but it was thrown out of court. When a kind and courteous Miguel told the judge I was a stripper, it was all over for me. I stomped out of court in disbelief. I couldn't believe the judge judged me like that. There was nothing I could say or do, and I felt betrayed and hopeless. And that's a very common thing in the misogynistic society that we live in. Whether you're a current adult entertainer or retired, quite often, especially male judges in our American judicial system, will judge current and ex-adult entertainers quite unfairly. In the future, I believe that will change. But for now, to the judges who do partake in that practice, yeah, because it's happened to me. Friday night came along, and it was my turn to clean up after closing time. I stacked up the dancers' trays and wiped down the entire bar. I was really tired and couldn't wait to go to bed. My friend Justin gave me a ride home that night. and we stopped off to pick up my daughter Tiffany and my roommate at a friend's house. It was about 2:45 a.m. As we walked toward our apartment, I grabbed my keys and unlocked the front door. Exhausted from work, I didn't notice the screen lying on the ground near my feet. When I opened the door, I was shocked to see a man sitting on my couch with a knife. Miguel. That was it for me. He had pushed me over the edge and into insanity. Later that day, I called up Justin and we devised an evil plan. Justin loved me and would have done anything for me, and he did. Everything was set. Justin waited in the parking lot, and I stood outside of a restaurant near my home. Miguel took the bait and showed up 30 minutes after me. I knew he couldn't show up earlier than that because he was married with kids. I would have told his wife about our psycho affair, but I always felt sorry for the kids. But not tonight, I thought. I didn't care if those kids ever saw their father again. Miguel suspected I was up to something and guarded everything he said or did. He was extremely smart when he was sober. So I suggested we do shots of tequila for old time's sake. There had been so much blood spilt between us, and I just wanted it to end, I told him, as I softly laid my hand on his. I knew I could melt his heart. I also knew he was carrying a gun. We drank about 10 shots together, or at least he did. I gulped my shot back and threw each one behind my ear. While he got drunk, I slipped a bag of extra cocaine into his pocket. I knew he dabbled in cocaine and hoped he still had some in his system. After an hour or so, I asked him if I could use the restroom. He argued I was trying to set him up, and I insisted I really had to go. I walked around the corner and found the nearest payphone and called 911. Please help me. I'm being held hostage at a bar by a man with a gun. We're sitting in the booth near the front door, I cried on the phone. 10 minutes later, the cops busted in and searched Miguel and found a gun on him and a little bag of cocaine in his right pocket. Miguel's eyes fumed into mine as they handcuffed him and placed him under arrest. After a few minutes, I walked by the cop car and smiled at Miguel through the glass, dangling his truck keys in front of him. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, I stole those out of his jacket pocket. Miguel was arrested and charged with carrying a concealed weapon and drug possession and sentenced to 1 month in jail. See, only 1 month. While he rotted behind county bars, I happily rode off in his 4x4 truck to enjoy the sandy beaches in Ensenada, Mexico. And I'll go ahead and end that particular chapter right there. But I just want to conclude this podcast by saying, anytime anyone wants to stop doing something, they can stop doing it. All they have to do is ask their higher power and ask their higher self to love them and respect them. All I'm saying is that in order to achieve anything you want to do in life, all you got to do is love yourself. You know, since this coronavirus pandemic has been in effect, I've noticed quite a few sex workers on social media saying, why are so many people trying to shame me for continuing to be a sex worker during this coronavirus? I don't know if some of these women are delusional or intoxicated writing this mess, or mentally ill, or just not thinking straight. But what I will say is that it's not shaming anyone to say that they shouldn't be doing sex work during a national disease pandemic. There's tons of jobs out there, maybe not as high paying, but there's many jobs out there outside of sex work. And as I tweeted earlier tonight, sometimes it's just time to stop. You got to know when to stop. And now is one of those times. So I wish everyone the best. Thanks for listening to Chapter 7 of The Truth Behind the Fantasy of Porn, the Greatest Illusion on Earth, written by the dearly departed Shelley Lubben, an activist, a mother, and a friend.